Dei molti lavori che il dottor Symington ha scritto, pochi sono stati tradotti in italiano e vorrei segnalarne qui uno, una tecnica per facilitare la creazione della mente, uscito sull'International Journal e tradotto nell'Annata Psicoanalitica Internazionale. Il titolo è molto eloquente, ma vorrei qui associare alla tecnica per la creazione della mente quello dello sviluppo della creatività della mente. Tra i vari elementi di questa tecnica, il dottor Symington ne evidenzia uno che mi ha molto colpito, l'atto contemplativo. Nell'atto di contemplazione, la persona si meraviglia al cospetto dell'altro e in questa meraviglia è presente uno stupore concentrato dinanzi ad una qualità presente nell'altro. Vorrei sottolineare che questo stupore dell'atto contemplativo è nei riguardi di una qualità dell'altro in quanto altro e non un'estensione del sé finito. Leggendo queste cose mi sono chiesto se e quanto sono in grado di provare questo stupore o almeno di dispormi nella condizione di poterlo provare. Ho trovato un buon esercizio di igiene per la mia mente e svolgendo il mio lavoro pormi ogni tanto questa domanda: sono aperto allo stupore? Sono in grado di meravigliarmi nell'incontro con un paziente? Oppure penso di sapere cosa accadrà? Oppure mi aspetto che accada qualcosa? Cosa c'entra questo col tema della guarigione, che è uno dei motivi che ci ha condotto qui oggi? Credo c'entri, anche perché il dottor Symington, al termine del lavoro che sto citando, dice una cosa semplice quanto ricca, su cui sono totalmente d'accordo. Lui dice che se una cosa accade in una persona che è in comunicazione con l'altra, avviene in entrambe. Vuol dire che se io mi occupo della cura e della guarigione della mia mente, ciò avviene nella relazione e nell'altro. Su questo tema, la psicoanalisi italiana e diversi analisti del nostro centro hanno detto e scritto cose interessanti e profonde riferendosi al concetto di campo e alla co-costruzione del processo analitico. Gli strumenti a disposizione degli psicoanalisti sono andati via via affinandosi nel corso dei decenni, soprattutto insistendo su quello che allora mancava e che oggi qui cercheremo insieme di affinare, la qualità dell'ascolto, ciò che ha fatto della psicoanalisi negli anni, oltre che una talking cure, soprattutto una listening cure. Poiché siamo qui a parlare di guarigione, sono certo che si avrà modo di parlare di guarigione come conquista della possibilità di sentire le emozioni piuttosto che di evitarle. Vorrei solo dire che la parola emozione contiene un movimento, un moveo, un essere scossi o mossi da qualcosa, ma anche muoversi da e dunque andare verso. A questo proposito mi viene in mente Borges, uno che anche da cieco, ma forse anche proprio perché cieco, non ha mai smesso di muoversi e muovere emozioni. Borges diceva che ci sono momenti in cui essere più leali col sogno che con la realtà. Credo sia un buon viatico per poter affinare i nostri strumenti qui, oggi, e augurarci buon lavoro.
So the title of this talk is What Happens at the Moment of Healing? And I start with a quote from Tolstoy. Tolstoy said, "The more cloudy and confused the conception conveyed by a word, with the more aplomb and self-assurance do people use that word, pretending that what is understood by it is so simple and clear that it is not worthwhile even to discuss what it actually means." That's from Tolstoy's essay on what is art. I think a brilliant essay in my mind.
Questa citazione di apertura è tratta dal saggio che Tolstoi ha scritto su che cos'è l'arte, secondo me uno scritto molto interessante.
Psychotherapy is a word derived from Greek meaning healing of the soul. We here at this conference clearly believe that just as a doctor with the right instruments to hand is able to administer healing to the body, so also we soul healers are able to administer healing to the mind. At first sight, the psychotherapist has no instruments. If a hidden camera were photographing and recording the events of a psychotherapy session, we would see two people talking together. We would have to conclude that healing comes about through this very ordinary conversation. When I was in London training, I went to a series of seminars that Wilfred Bion gave at two different venues, at the Tavistock during the day and at the Institute of Psychoanalysis in the evening. In one of the seminars at the Institute, he said, "Most psychoanalysts do not believe that this strange conversation works." I want therefore to divide up the rest of what I want to say into the following sections. The first section, what is the nature of the problem that brings the patient to the psychotherapist's consulting room? 2, what is the instrument that enables the psychotherapist to alleviate the problem? And 3, is there a moment of healing? So we start with the patient's problem. The first thing of which we can be confident is that this patient, this person here in my consulting room, has come because she has a problem which is seeking to solve, and secondly, that the problem is to some extent hidden from her. A friend and colleague who went from Brazil to California to have an analysis with Bion said in his opening session, "I've come all this way, and I've brought my family with me, and I've rented a house nearby, and yet I do not know why I have come." And Bion replied, "If you knew why, you would not be here. You would not have wasted your time in coming. It is precisely because you did not know that you came here." I am deeply moved by this comment of Bion because he understood so deeply my friend's troubled quandary. So the patient knows there is a problem, although her problem is hidden from her, and yet she has an intuition that someone else may be able to detect what it is, so she will describe the situation in life that is causing her such anguish. One woman, Felicity, tells that her boyfriend Rudolph becomes extremely jealous if she ever looks at another man. She describes being on a beach with him, and she looks at a man negotiating a wave on his surfboard, and Rudolph flies into a rage. She tells that Rudolph's younger brother came to stay from overseas, and she tried to make him welcome in a friendly way, and Rudolph shouted and screamed at her. So here is apparently an obvious case of a boyfriend who is jealous, and these episodes of his jealousy frighten her and make her miserable and depressed. Felicity was taken into therapy by a therapist called Frederick, who was wise enough not to say that she must be doing something that provokes these jealous episodes. After many sessions stretching over months and years, it emerged that Felicity had never been able to love, and this was her problem. Rudolph's rages were because he was not loved. When Felicity one day said, hiding her face in shame, that she had never loved, Frederick knew that she was at this very moment beginning to love. This was because Frederick knew that Felicity could not say that she'd never been able to love when no glimmer of love was operating in her. It is that Felicity had to have some personal knowledge of what love is to enable her to make the judgment that she'd never been able to love before. It is made from the vantage point of a new position, where now knowing what love is can then say that it had never happened before. This means that when Felicity first approached Frederick, there was knowledge of a cloudy nature, that there was something lacking in her emotional makeup. So this is the next section, which I've entitled The Psychotherapist's Instrument. In the brief account I've given above, this question arises: what was the instrument that Frederick had to hand that enabled Felicity to begin to love? One of the most striking findings that has come out of the researches of the attachment theorists is that a baby is able to attach securely to the mother who is able to reflect on her own experience, the mother who is able to reflect on her own experience, even when that experience has been bad or traumatic. Peter Hobson has expressed this clearly, where he says, "The person who is free to evaluate attachments is able to assimilate and think about her own past experiences in relationships, even when these have been unsatisfactory. She has mental space to relate to her own relations with others. She can reflect on her own feelings and impulses and can forgive and tolerate her own shortcomings. So too, she has space to relate to her own baby as an independent and separate person, and to be sensitive to her baby's state of mind in such a way that the baby is likely to become securely attached." This is a very remarkable statement. It's not as if the mother says to herself, "If I reflect on my experience, then my baby will be able to attach securely," but that this natural capacity to think and reflect on her experience has an enabling function for the baby. And Hobson also asks at another point whether the principle enunciated here may apply not only to parent-infant relations, but also to adult intimate relationships. My experience in the consulting room convinces me of the truth of this observation. So, being guided by this line of thinking, it would follow that it was Frederick's capacity to reflect upon his experience that enabled Felicity to begin to love. In other words, a capacity that is actively functioning in one person has a transitive power. It transmits to the other that he or she is relating to. The only thing I would want to modify in this statement of Peter Hobson is not that the baby comes securely attached, but that it is able to relate. The mother who is able to relate to her own experience fosters the capacity to relate in her baby. The intrapsychic reality, i.e. that someone is able to reflect on her own experience, is also an interpersonal reality. It is in fact one reality, but due to the limitations of thought, it is categorized as two processes. So the next and the most important of these three sections is there a moment of healing? A woman, Rebecca, came subsequent to a psychotic breakdown. It's actually the same woman I referred to in my talk last night, but it's taking a particular point in it.
Questa paziente Rebecca è la stessa di cui abbiamo parlato ieri sera, ma qui mi concentro su un punto particolare.
What this meant in practice was that she was unable to converse with people. She was paralyzed in her capacity to communicate. She said that when she met up with friends, they looked at her as if to say, "What has the cat sicked up?" In sessions for 2 years, she could just manage to say something, initially once in every 10 minutes, then slowly it would be a visual image which appeared in a hallucinatory moment in the consulting room. Slowly, over 2 years, she'd be able to communicate in a normal way, or more or less normal way, with me. One of her complaints about me was that I did not understand women's problems. Then something happened, and I'd like to record it as accurately as possible, and ask all of you here to listen carefully to what occurred between us, and also inside of me. So here's the start of it. She entered in a defiant mood and said, "All you've helped me to do is to speak with the wonderful you. Oh yes, the wonderful you, but I cannot speak with anyone else outside this sacred room." I felt like saying, well, at least that's something. But I muzzled my tongue and said nothing. In the following session, she came in and said, "Now I've found someone who is really sympathetic to women." And she'd been to visit a gynecologist, and she continued, "He is a man, but he should be canonized as a woman. Now he is really sympathetic to women, and I could speak to him openly and freely." My emotional temperature went up close to boiling point, but I let it bubble for a while, said nothing, and the heat inside of me cooled. Once this cooling had occurred, I saw what she had said in a favorable light, so I said to her, "Something important has happened since the last session, when you told me you were unable to speak to anyone except myself, but you are now able to, and you've had a flowing conversation with this man." When I said this, a calm atmosphere ruled over the room. A moment of healing, I believe, had occurred, but I want to take you this step by step. Then the actual moment of healing is when, after I have said to her that something important has now happened, i.e., that she now is able to converse with someone outside the consulting room. There's a peaceful silence. The peaceful silence is the manifestation that the moment of healing has occurred. The peaceful silence is not itself the moment of healing, but the manifestation of the moment of healing. The moment of healing cannot be seen directly, but only inferred indirectly. It is enormously important to realize the difference between a feeling, which is the manifestation of something, as opposed to the thing itself. I have stressed here that the egotism, the amour propre, the vanity, is an obstacle to healing. The moment of healing is when she and I are in a shared medium of communication, and I need quickly to give the background to this. There are two realities which are true of me, of you, of everyone who's ever inhabited this planet. One is that I'm a transient creature, born at a particular time and will die at a specific moment, and also there's a universe whose central characteristic is permanence. It just is, and it's not transient. The thing that we cannot grasp because of the limitations of our own mind, again one of Kant's antinomies, that the capacity to think is that although I am transient, yet I am part of something that's permanent. The human community, in a special reciprocal way, shares the permanence of the universe, and it's what the Neoplatonist philosopher Plotinus described as the world soul. The moment of healing is when these two transient human beings, Neville and Rebecca, participate in a medium which they both share. Once one sees this, then one can see that for this to happen, it was necessary both for Rebecca's egotism and Neville's egotism to be dissolved in favor of the shared medium. This throws a different light on her declaration to me about the wonderful me. Only if I can transform this egotism in myself am I able to be an agent of healing for her. So in fact she has to throw it at me in this way, as if to say, "Neville, only if you can transform this egotism of yours will you be in communication with me. So I have to throw it at you as a challenge, and if you can meet it, then I can be healed." It implies that when I am puffed up and feeling insulted, that I too have an undeveloped function. In this case, it would be my inability to stand outside myself and see the joint medium in which we both participate. So one can see from this that this could only happen when the individual egotism of Rebecca and of Neville were dissolved in favour of a shared medium in which both participate. In that peaceful silence, I infer that this transformation is what has happened. The peaceful silence is the manifestation of the communicative medium in which we both share. Healing can only come to the other if healing happens also in me. Thank you.